Oh my gosh, a wardrobe change. This guy's amazing. So now I'd like to talk about the view from 10,000 feet up. Sort of a broad overview of where the US and the world stand with the practice of entomophagy. We have about 6 or more billion people on the planet, and about 1/3 of them engage in insect eating for at least a portion of their nutritional needs. So one could argue that it's not an uncommon practice when you look at it at a global scale. In 2013, the United Nations FAO, Food and Agriculture Organization, released a booklet, a fairly thick one, basically advocating for the practice of entomophagy. Now, their predictions are fairly dire, but we do have a growing population, all of which has a protein need on the planet. And in insects, we have an abundant, farmable, ecologically friendly, and available option. So, that was their plea for all of us to think about it a little more. A little closer to home, we've noticed right around that same time, about 8 years ago when the UN released its report, a clear uptick in the interest in and acceptance of entomophagy here in the United States. I've seen more websites devoted to the topic. There are a lot of entrepreneurs who have micro farms where they're raising insects specifically for human consumption. There are certainly more nutrition bars, snacks, and flowers, all of which are insect-based, on the market and available to us. And last, you can find a lot of restaurants all around the country where there are insect dishes now being offered. Nutritionally, it's really interesting when you serve insects to people who just don't know a lot, but they hear a little, and they'll say, there's a lot of protein in bugs, right? Well, the answer is yes. A percent of their dry weight that's protein is pretty high in most insects. But just as the fat, carbohydrate, and protein content isn't the same between fish and beef and chicken, we shouldn't expect a termite and a beetle larva and a wasp, for example, to all have the same nutritional value. And fortunately, this topic has become so important now that there are a few university laboratories around the world that are dedicating a lot of time and resources to studying nutrition across the board. And generally, insects do have a good balance for us, but what I love to do is cite the house cricket statistics, because those are the ones I've committed to memory, and I've probably served more house crickets to people than anything else. So, per 100 grams of house cricket, you get about 12 to 13 grams of protein, 5 grams of carbohydrate, 5 grams of fat. And that's a pretty good balance for people. I was asked once by someone who was writing a book, yeah, but how many crickets would you have to eat in a day to get your protein need? So I did a lot of math, and I'm not very good at math, but I came up with some number that seemed really big, like 1,500 crickets. And the guy said, 1,500 crickets? And I said, well, hang on a minute. And I counted out some crickets, and I put 500 of them in a container, and it was about this big. I said, that's your eggs and bacon at breakfast, that's the turkey on your sandwich at lunchtime, and that's your chicken breast for dinner, or what have you. And so from a volume standpoint, it's not like you have to eat a huge amount of insects to make the protein equivalent of some of the other things that we like to eat. The ecological component of entomophagy is a pretty interesting one. It takes an inordinate amount of grain, of plant matter, to get 1 pound of beef on the table. Don't get me wrong, I do like a good steak as much as the next person, but if you're simply looking at land use and water use, what it takes to put livestock and poultry on the table relative to insects is a ridiculous ratio. It's crazy. If we want to do something ecologically good, we should add insects to our diet. I often tell people, I'm about 50 years old, I'm older than that, and when I was a kid, if you would have come up to me and said, hey, got a restaurant concept, raw fish, I might have looked at you like you had a couple of loose screws. And now you can find sushi restaurants in the middle of Nevada and Iowa, which the last time I checked isn't even close to the ocean. So, if sushi, once not widely accepted here, can become as popular as it is, maybe we'll see the same thing with entomophagy as well. So, my little summation for people, after I've usually had a lot of time to talk to them, is, we already eat crustaceans, right? Those are just bugs that live in the water. This is something that is good for you. If it's prepared well, it's good tasting. It's good for the environment. Frankly, the FDA allows bugs in a lot of what you eat already, so you've probably already ingested your share of insects. And all of this brings us to the real question, which isn't, why eat bugs? It's, why not eat bugs? Well, folks, I hope you aren't asleep yet. I haven't tried to be too funny, but I did wear my punny shirt. I don't know if you can tell, but these are weevils. And if you look at their legs, see no weevil, hear no weevil, speak no weevil. Now, if you don't like those dad jokes, I do have another genre in which I've dabbled, which is rap. I don't have a beatbox with me right now, so I hope you'll forgive the lack of percussive accompaniment, but this is my plea to all of you. Yo, check it out, now listen to me, gonna tell you all about entomophagy. Why eat bugs? Well, you know they're nutritious, and if you fix them right, they're also delicious. I'm the Cajun bug chef from New Orleans, and we knows how to cooks, if you knows what I means. I'm sure all you peeps have heard the whole planet eats bugs, so I say word, cause the crickets, caterpillars, and beetle larvae are all edible insects, boy. You can get them in the woods or buy them from the store, but when you try mine, you're gonna want more. How do I know that you will? Cause you always get a thrill when it's coming from my grill. It's not a challenge, not even a test. It's just eating bugs, and it's the best. 6 legs, boy.